Also, in exciting news, we'll try and front load some of the really pertinent information here. So we have announced another hard fork that is planned for mid-July at block height 247,900 or 247,900. We have SPD 183 that is out. So we removed SciMux and ephemeral accounts. We can get a little bit into why those were there in the first place, but it was essentially Saya's version of implementing the kind of tokenization that we had in our white paper. There's no change to functionality. It's just a nice code cleanup. We're giving lots of opportunity to update. It should be on everyone's Grafana panel. As usual, the X miner hardware are either already upgraded or will be over the next couple days. So go ahead and get upgraded and do that. And I think we already have a few hundred storage providers that have upgraded to 183. So that's pretty good because that announcement's only been out for like a day or two.
The guy just asked in the chat about the deadline to upgrade. As far as deadlines go, the only deadline that exists is that you need to remit the rebates by the end of this month. And if you don't remit the rebates, well, I mean, we'll probably have a little grace window where we, give you a 2 or 3 day period, but you need to get that done.
For those who have been around the Discord the last couple of days and followed us on Twitter, they may have picked up that there was a bit of an air and atmosphere of excitement over the last couple of days. What's become apparent over the last little while is that the last piece that we needed to really iron out and get just how it needed to be and get it just right was the console. So we've steered a lot of people through the console. That's the same console I'm talking about where you activate your licenses. So I think some people have, hopefully, if you're listening to the call, you've seen it. But I guess if you're just an Examiner storage provider, you maybe haven't. But we have just released a pretty extensive console implementation or re-implementation. This is version 2. So kind of in that direction and with that teased, I'll ask you this, Ken. Why is today different from yesterday? What has changed?
2022 by any stretch was difficult, and it's been difficult for a lot of different reasons and across a lot of different venues, but it was specifically difficult for us because in addition to crypto sort of pivoting into that crypto winter profile, we kind of ended up in a weird situation in that because we're small and because we aren't on big exchanges, because we haven't done all that crypto marketing, because we came in 2018 bear, we didn't have an ICO, all that sort of stuff. What ended up happening was we didn't actually get our sort of pump that crypto bestows after, a Bitcoin move until the very end. We had made decisions that, we probably would have changed. One decision we made was we went to Las Vegas and did a trade show for media and entertainment. And the whole idea there was our thought process, everything internalized was that we had a product that was live, right? That we were going live with a shipping product. We knew when we got to Vegas that the thing didn't fully work, but the stuff that didn't work, we knew just needed some, tooling, and then we'd be up and running. We could come back to the office, we'd start selling storage, and we'd go forward. Well, we got back to the office. Was just a very short period of time after we broke the contractor. The contractor was too weak to stand up on its own. It was running on a simple, basic single environment. I don't think we had Kafka running in the side saddle with it at that point in time. It was really not a very robust thing. And we spent all summer long re-architecting the contractor, building it up from sort of scratch, rewriting our contracting software, and then ultimately standing it up on a Kafka cluster, which is, a tool that can help us to scale up to hyperscale global. If we end up with millions of contracts, we're going to be able to easily scale out from what we've built now with Conductor. And that's the new name of our contractor. So that took all the, most of the summer and a little bit of the fall, right? And of course, that whole period of time, we're bleeding money, right? I mean, have to pay developers, have to pay the staff. And, we didn't have the kind of capital that everybody else has. And then, of course, with the crypto winter doing this, our money was disappearing a lot faster. And a lot of the money that we thought we were going to have, right, didn't show up. We get to the end of the year, and I think, we got a good contractor working, and now we're really kind of ready to rock and roll. But then we realize that the relayer is just really, really, really challenged. It's hard to use. It's going to be a hard sell. It's going to be hard pickup for anybody. And so Relayer V1, I just started, getting really, challenged by it. And I knew we had to do something. And I started proposing wizards and all these other things that we could try and do to make it more of a pleasant environment, a better, easier way to go. But I kept waking up every morning going, this isn't going to work. This is not going to happen. And by the way, I knew this clear back in 2018 when we designed this thought for the relayer, that the thing had to be really easy and pretty, clean to set up. Otherwise, people weren't going to take it up. They just say, I don't have to do that with AWS. Why do I have to do it here? So we went into a fairly long and involved sprint cycle, totally focused on getting the relayer out the door in a really good way. I was not very impressed about how it was proceeding, and I kind of was getting more and more intense about it, primarily because we ran out of money in November. We reached one of those places in one of our meetings, and things got pretty intense. And I just said, fuck it, we're going to have to throw out the relayer code and just start over and come up with something that's really very base level. And I think that lit the fire in everybody, because people are really in our team are really bought into this product. They put a lot of time and energy into it, and they really believe in it. And so what they did is they went back to the drawing board and they came up with a whole sort of suite of ideas and strategies and direction. And they banged out Relayer V2. And I think if you've tried Relayer V2, you understand what night and day it is from the original version, and what a fantastic piece of software it is, and how well it actually works. It really does fulfill the promise, and it does make it so that, it's not really a big challenge to stand up. Yes, you have to do a couple of things with Docker, and maybe you got to do some things you've never done before, even if you're working in a Windows environment or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's trivial and it's really easy to stand up. So Relayer V2 got out the door. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's like, well, Relayer, right? Okay, that means we're ready, right? Now, where's all the storage? We should be ready to go. But we had a kind of a time bomb that had been ticking the whole time. And it turned out that actually billing for our software, billing for storage that we sold, didn't really work. And we had a lot of issues and wrinkles there. And, the relayer itself, the core understanding of our network goes all the way back to, 2018, of course, but by 2020, it was working, right? We had guys backing up VM in 2020. But when we go through the rest of the next 2 years, you really realize what size of a product we've, bitten off here to develop. This thing isn't, an Android app. It's literally an ecosystem to rival AWS. And, not even counting that we're building it on a shoestring. The anecdote for AWS is that the one part of AWS that never goes down is the billing department. Well, in our case, the billing department wasn't working correctly. And so we needed to all come together as a team. We put together a sprint behind that. I need to be able to charge for data, right? So I go out there and I talk to customers. I say, look, we're going to sell you a terabyte of data. How do I sell it to you? Do I sell it to you at 1 for 1? Or do I sell it to you based on erasure coding that we're doing, which right now is 80/40? So that means that for every 1 terabyte that I upload to the network, there's an expansion factor that takes it up to 1.5 terabytes, right? So if I sell you 1, there's 1.5 going up to the network. Well, who gets billed for that other 0.5 terabyte? And how do we track that? And what happens if some of the parity pieces actually are the churn pieces that go away and drop off and so forth? And do I charge less when some drop off, or what? So there's a whole bunch of things that have to be sort of understood there and carefully monitored. And then you have to present that to the user in such a way that they know that you're charging them exactly what they're using, right up to, a specific period of time. But then at that point, then you also have to remember, are things a little different? You upload your stuff to Jeff at AWS, and he knows exactly what you have. He can look right in at your stuff. Now, maybe he can't see if you've client-side encrypted it, what you've actually uploaded, but he can see the terabytes. He can see exactly the amount of data, and he's got it all in his data center. So he's got control over it, right? We don't have that. We never see your data. This is the whole beauty of the relayer. You are in sole control of your data. And how am I supposed to actually track how much you've uploaded if I never see your data, right? It's a big engineering challenge. And so we really tackled that well. And I think we came up with a really great idea for it. And the relayer has this component in it called the file manager, which will actually abstract that out even further going forward. But the piece that really pulls it all together now for us is the new console, which essentially now is where you access, like all other clouds, to be able to put in your billing details and to do all that sort of stuff. But it's all the stuff that's under the hood. You can't look at what we've accomplished and not be enthusiastic about this whole direction, because at the end of the day, we've taken an extremely complicated ecosystem and we've delivered on every piece of it. Yes, it's taken longer than we wish that it would have taken, but we're now at that place where we can really take off and fly. This is a pretty standard looking cloud console, right? I mean, this is, if you go to AWS or Oracle, wherever, you're going to look at the same thing. The buttons in the middle of the screen actually are fairly close to coming along, and we'll be able to get those live. The real key thing over in the left-hand side, there's three key things actually that are important right now. So the main thing that's going on in here is that, we've got this billing strategy set up with credit card payments. And that was the first, thing that needed to be squared away and set up and so forth. And, we have customer information manager at AuthNet. So essentially we don't keep your credit cards and stuff like that. We'll be rolling out different payment methods over the next couple of weeks, purchase orders for, businesses and partners and so forth. Doing credit, net terms, that kind of thing, and other kinds of payment methods as we go along. Obviously, as time goes by, we'll roll out things like even crypto payments. But for now, getting credit card payments out the door was the key functionality, and that's working fine. The other thing that's really important is that everything now is really very keyed in to our SSO solution. So what you're really going to want to do is make sure that the login you have to our site right now in the console is the one you want to have across the platform suite. So where you buy your licenses, examiners, where you do anything, if you're a partner, you want to have that all be very consistent, because that way it will tie all your assets together under the console here as we start to roll out all the various pieces that go to it. The other piece that's really, we needed to get done, obviously, was the licenses. The nice thing about the licensing panel now is that you can go in and see your own licenses. And when you see your own licenses, and I think this one's probably challenged for me because I have a bunch of fake licenses that have been put in there, but in your own licensing portal now, you can find licenses and then claim them yourself and reset them yourself. That's always been a kind of a thing that you had to do. So that's now in here for you. And then what I want to show you sort of next is this other piece, which is really the piece that we've been focusing on, because partners are our salespeople to begin with. Partners have had some challenges getting started because the partners that we have right now are not big time MSPs. They're not people that have, big Rolodexes of customers in their base that they can just go out and sell to. They're people that want to start businesses and get into this thing, and they think they can tackle the world. So they're here. But the thing that they didn't have available to them was an easy ability to manage their customers. Now they do. Part of what we did in this thing was set up these cost centers. And cost centers are tied to that SSO, the Keycloak login, right? So we actually have two capabilities built into this. We have the ability to set up sub cost centers under your cost center. So in this case, you can see I have my primary account down here on the bottom, right? But then I can go in and I can set up additional cost centers, and I can go in and look at those specific, cost centers, right? And then as soon as the first rolls around and we have actual invoices to go out, then invoicing will be deployed and show up there. It works right now. It's just there's nothing to show yet because we haven't got there yet. But the deal here is that you can go in and you can set up cost centers. You can put in the details, some aliases. This will actually on July 1st show up with, address information, name, just notes that you want to put in about your customers. But that's a sub cost center that exists underneath the partner's account. So that's tied to the partner's SSO login. But we can also group other SSO logins under a partner. So your customers will have the ability to come in and set up in the portal and then get billed separately from you, right? And that might be the case for if we do something like a lower tier affiliate, or if the customers, are going to be invoiced by us and we just charge you a little service fee for doing the invoicing and, net terming and, chasing credit, all that sort of stuff for you as a partner. So that's done and that's ready to go, and it works today. Both of those kinds of partners exist, and the portal actually works today. I can show you a little bit of the usage chart that's going on in here. But then what ends up happening is that you get an invoice on, a 30-day calendar. And then as that invoice shows up each month, there's going to be a discrete line by line accounting of what you've done, files you've deleted, files you've added, and so forth. And that's all working now. So starting on the 1st, some invoices are going to be going out and people are going to be on the hook for the first time paying us for storage.
I do see that misconception often, that people aren't really sure who is the actual salesperson on our network. Like, is it us? Is it the storage providers? Well, and really the answer is that it's the partners. So our job is to try and recruit partners and give them all the tools and all the tools in their belt that they need to sell effectively, be able to be the best that they can be, and bring data to our network. So that being said, and we even touched on this in the channels today, in reference to the storage network, is some kind of discussion and reframing in the storage network space right now of how do you effectively balance growing the network with using the space that you already have, and then the pricing can factor into that, because then how dynamic of a marketplace do you want to have? So something like Saya, which is just a Wild West marketplace where anyone can make up any price they want and charge that, or something like storage, where the kind of centralized company behind it sets the prices, and you don't have any control over that, and they pay you what they tell you they're going to pay you, and they can change it month to month, which they have now several months in a row. So with all that being said, and with all those implications around the question, when is data coming to our network, and how are you expecting it to come to our network?
We have said from the beginning, we want storage providers to make a lot of money. And that is how we baked it into all of our projections, all of the things we're out there doing with investment, is this understanding of how the data is going to come into the network, how the money's going to be made, at which points, right? And what you need to do to be part of that, right? But if you're somebody who actually sees it correctly, and look, let me just give you an example of that. Everybody that bought an Examiner in June of 21, right, was able to say by January or February that they'd ROI'd that thing multiple times, literally 7 months later, before we ever had a product, before anything happened, they'd already ROI'd these miners. But look, this is the thing, and this is our key sort of unfair advantage. Let's call it that. Yes, I can give you 6 bullet points about how we disrupt AWS across 6 different vectors. We're going to beat them on price. We're going to beat them on security. We beat them on durability. We beat them across all kinds of vectors. They literally cannot compete. The place where they compete is they have EC2, Lambda, they have CDN, they have all the stuff that's on top. And so then they charge you for egress. So they block people in. So yeah, it's really easy for them to sort of say, come after us, come and get us. But here's the thing. On a straight storage perspective, we beat them. And we beat everybody else, by the way. We beat Wasabi. We beat everybody. The salesperson's job is going to be fairly trivially easy once they identify the niche that they want to go and attack and find the right software tool to use, like VM or some digital asset management software or whatever tool it's going to be that they need to tackle. Once they pair up the relayer, once they set up the right strategy for on-prem versus relayer in a data center, once they get that all sort of ironed out with the individual customer in play, being able to tackle any of the people that are out there is going to be trivially easy for us. Now, in a normal world, you just say, okay, great, go to market. Let's do that. Let's just win. Unfortunately, cost to acquire customers is very high for this kind of thing, right? Because I've got to get out there and I've got to get our name known. I've got to get out there. I've got to get people who, are not going to jeopardize their jobs easily to show up at this thing and take a look at it. And then after they take a look at it, I've got to be able to, sell them on those 6 disruptors and then show them the money and so forth and get them onboarded. I know for a fact if I had $10 million right now, that it would be very easy for us to assume our place against somebody like Storage or Backblaze or Wasabi even, and to take our place in that tier. But that's not how we came about. It's not who we are. It's not what we're doing. And it's not how this is going to work. It's this evolution then revolution thing. And it's this network token incentivized network strategy. The whole idea behind a token incentivized network was really proven out radically by Helium. Look, they showed up in 2013. They didn't know how to do this. They tried to build it out. They spent several years. They didn't get anywhere. They had a good idea. They had good investors behind them. They had big time investors behind them. They had a lot of money. And then as time went by, they got even more money behind them, right? Sean Fanning from Napster's there. They've got a bunch of Silicon Valley people behind them, a lot of money underneath the hood. But then they came in and hooked up with crypto right at the time of the next cycle, and magic happened, right? Magic happened. You can't say anything other than that. Magic happened. And they showed exactly how it works. They sold $500 million worth of nodes in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, then translated for them into a $200 million cap raise in May of 2022, right? That's almost $1 billion worth of money coming into their coffers, right? Just because they found and understood the token incentivized network idea, right? As far as I can tell, Helium's mistake was they didn't have a plan for the next part, right? They didn't have it set up so that they could grow the other side of the house, right? In our case, the storage side, but in their case, the IoT use, all of the stuff that needed to go along there. They didn't have that lined up. And so consequently, they sold this, $500 million worth of network and didn't have anything to use it for. And so consequently, 1 million nodes showed up and then 500,000 left. We are where they were 3 years ago. But you are the early Helium guys. You are the guys that were here for Helium back in those early days. The difference is we have a partner program stood up. We now have billing. We have the whole 9 yards. We can sell storage. And now we're going to go out there and we can limit node sales if we aren't generating enough storage sales along the way to make this work. What's different here from every other storage network on the planet, including the decentralized one, is that we're going to lose money on every terabyte we upload. We've already acknowledged that. We've admitted it. It's a loss leader for us for the first 2 to 3 years of business. While we're Helium, right? While the network is going to do this, we expect to lose a lot of money on storage. Why? Because we want to pay you a lot of money. Right? We want to keep that thing at $4 plus, and we want to not, have to start charging the customer for parity. We want to, keep it on the thing where they upload a terabyte, they pay for a terabyte, and we want to keep the cost down, competitive with Wasabi, and get lower if we can. The partners can come in below Wasabi right now, by the way. And as we bring on millions and millions of nodes, or 300,000, which is our target number, what will end up happening is a lot of money will be accruing into the XNS storage network. The SEV Corp will be making a lot of money selling nodes and licenses, relayer MTs, and all kinds of other devices that we're putting together that will ultimately allow us to then turn around and seed the marketing efforts to pay for more developers, to continue to pay for SaaS solutions internally that we need, to pay for regional headquarters, to set up all the stuff that we need to set up. We will self-fund all of that stuff going forward. Yes, we could probably go out right now, and if we really were willing to surrender up to maybe 50% of the corp to big VCs, we might be able to go out and get $5-10 million and then go out there and just do that real hardcore brand marketing. And that's not what's going to turn us into a hyperscale competitor with AWS. The Helium model combined with storage is going to get us up to hyperscale and make us one of the top 5 cloud services in the world. I've got about 1,600 examiners out there right now. People that came in 2021 paid $3,500 for an examiner. Thing probably cost us about $1,600, $1,700 when it was all said and done. Maybe a little bit more than that, not too much more than that though, but whatever. They were thinking about big profits quickly. Maybe. I don't know what they were thinking. But a lot of them were sad within about 3 months. But they shouldn't have been. And not only should they not have been, but with the coin price doing what it did and crypto winter coming on the way it did, those people were given a great gift. What happened was this. They got paid their first rebates in January, and we made a mistake, actually. We thought we were doing them well, right? We thought we were helping them because the coin looked like it was just going to kind of keep going. So we gave them R1 and R2, the 2 rebate payments, quickly. But those first rebates were 10% and 20% of the total rebate amount. So what ended up happening was they got a small amount of coins, right? Because coins were $2 a piece or $3 a piece back then and looking like they're headed for, Venus. So essentially they got a couple hundred coins or something like that, maybe even less. I don't know. But it wasn't an awful lot of SCP. If they had just sold them off right then and there, they would get back, a percentage of that $3,500. Because what happened then next was they got R3 9 months later. What was 9 months later? It was November. The coin went down to like 20, 25 cents, looked like it had found a floor. And then what happened? But what happened was we had budgeted about $1.2 million, $1.3 million to give out in total for for that whole rebate cycle. We thought we were going to give out that many coins. And that was a big, big chunk of our wallet. We thought, geez, we're going to give out 30% of our wallet. And that's just crazy, and it's tough. That's not what happened. The coin went right into the tank right when the big rebates started being paid out. So what ended up happening is the rebates were paid on a dollar basis. So all of a sudden we were paying out 2x, 3x. And then we realized, oh my God, we're going to give out all of our coins on these rebates to these examiners and to the full license purchasers, and to a degree to the basic license buyers as well, because we promised to give all their money back. They got our $100 back. And there was quite a few coins that got 400 coins, I think, is what we gave out for R1 on the basic license holder, right? So a basic license holder who showed up here and paid $99 is going to walk away probably after this week with somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 to 850 coins, right? But remember, the coin reached $3.30. So if you're sitting there on 800 coins, and we just sit back and let Bitcoin do its thing over the next 6 to 9 to 12 months, and our coin just essentially rides along and does its normal sort of thing, we probably will have no problem hitting that $3. I'm not saying that that's why you should have got involved, but what I am saying to you is that's the reality of where you are. You're sitting on 800 coins that you've already seen go up to $3. And the same thing happened with the people with the examiners. Somebody who bought a 64 terabyte examiner is sitting on 8,000 and 9,000 coins right now. And I was going to put a bunch of that money in underneath the storage that we sold going forward, so I didn't have any cost of sales. So I could essentially book everything I sold as profitability and throw that directly back into marketing and so forth. All those plans got dashed against the rocks. Those coins got taken away from me and given to you. And so I'm okay with it. Okay? Our biggest thing is the Che monkey, right? Right? seize the means of production. That's what you've done. You've seized the means of production, and so will the 300,000 that come along behind you. And then you will own the data center that stores a good percentage of the world's data. So, how is this going to work? It's going to work that over the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to grow out the network to 300,000 nodes. We're going to lose money on every terabyte we sell in that period, but we're going to make a shitload of money on nodes and licenses and growing the network and developing a global hyperscale storage that can compete against AWS, right? And as we make all that money on the nodes and licenses, we'll grow our corp, we'll put in more developers, we'll do all the stuff we need to do. We'll start building out services like compute, containers, orchestration. We'll do CDN, we'll do database, we'll do block and file. We'll do all the stuff that we need to do to compete effectively. And then what will happen is, as we get into year 2 and year 3, and as storage is pouring into the network, we will begin to make money on the terabytes that we sell because of those additional service overlays that are living on the network. And because at that point in time, we will have the ability to let the marketplace mechanism really take hold. And yeah, it's going to be likely that in certain places, storage will drop below $4 a terabyte. But my gut tells me that it's always going to stay up in that $3 to $4 range. And if we see it dropping down to some crazy thing on the marketplace to like 22 cents or something like that, then we will step in and use the incentives in order to keep the floor where it needs to be. Our model is superior to everybody else's model in this regard. The big understanding is the planet wants passive income, right? So this desire to be part of this kind of thing and to earn what you guys are going to show very quickly is going to be very big. Now, some people are going to look at it and say, well, that's just a Ponzi scheme. You're saying, look, come in early, get all these tokens, watch them appreciate, get paid back before there's any use on the network, and blah, blah, blah. Isn't that just a pyramid scheme? No, it's not, because we're bringing in the storage at the same time. And what the pyramid is doing is it's growing out the foundation that Amazon had to pay billions and billions and billions of dollars to build. We have to build that Amazon data center. And as we do it, we actually enjoy an unfair advantage. All the people that want to earn passive income will come in and continue to drive the network up the ladder. The good news is data will be coming in at the same time. So when we get to year 4, year 5, and you have 50% of a 64 terabyte filled up, you're going to be pulling in good bucks every single month on real storage, right? Real data storage that's coming across. So not only will you have ROI'd like 10 times already on this unit because of the rebates and the way it all played out, but you will continue to be generating real solid good income that at that point, if you just want to spin it and turn it into US dollars, fine, do that and make that work. And look, it's not going to just die once you get to 5 years and, an Exo starts dying on you, right? You're going to be able to use the tools that are in place, migrate the data off those drives onto new drives, right? Whatever is available at that point, maybe 200 terabyte drives or whatever, and continue to hold that data forever. It's subscription business. A lot of the data that's on Wasabi has been there for years. A lot of the data that's on Amazon has been there for years. A lot of the data that's going into that big chart up growth will be there for decades.
I did just want to kind of remark on how ridiculous it is to hear that, like in a pitch and to an investor, that it sounds like they are fairly accomplished in their own business, that somebody could so completely miss the point of of a network like this and how primed it is to scale across a ton of different like markets. So I guess they suggested that we specifically hone in on film, and like I could see where they're coming from, and that might be, it's conventionally good advice for software in general, but I feel like it completely misses the point of a network like ours, and it also completely ignores the ability for partners to individually do those kinds of things, while we as the network behind it all can be scaling across a ton of different verticals. It just seems hilarious that somebody could sit through that pitch and really, have a think about it, and that's the conclusion that they came to, and not the outcome where in 5 years we have an enormous network that is capable of onboarding like a ton of the world's data needs, and doing it with all sorts of advantages over traditional cloud, like more at a way that's cost competitive, performance competitive. That's one that I always like to bring up because we have done the head-to-head AWS competition. That's the receipts are there. That's published on our website. That our network is, unless you have a direct networking pipe straight to an AWS data center, our network is legitimately probably faster than using something like AWS. And I feel like that doesn't get as much admiration as maybe it should, but I think that's pretty incredible. There's so many different ways that this is the obvious choice and primed to scale. I mean, it scales better than anything. So the people that are kind of coming to our network, I guess with some preconceptions already from other storage networks that have existed, although I guess in a sense calling Chia storage network is a little generous, in the sense that it uses storage, but it doesn't really use storage. But that there is kind of a paradigm that people come in wanting to see a huge usage on their disks and are generally okay with being paid next to nothing for it because that's what happens in crypto. That's the framework that people have been conditioned to across GPUs, where you spend tons of money to get GPUs, and as you set them up and you run them over time, they yield less and less. That happened on things like Chia. But this is a different paradigm. This is a different network. And I think it would be preferable, if you stop and think about it, it seems like it would be preferable, right, to have less usage but at a higher rate starting out, rather than fill your whole disk but for like 20 cents or something. Because then if your disks are used but for dirt cheap, you're probably going to have a harder time raising that to then, instead of 20 cents per terabyte or whatever, trying to get that up into higher levels. It seems like it's much more readily the right way to go, to set that like $4 a terabyte or as close to it as you can get, and then grow the storage, because it's easier to move the storage needle than it is the price needle at the end of the day. So I think if you stop and think about it, it makes sense. But I guess it goes against maybe the grain that has been common in the crypto space, that people come in with preconceptions about. So just wanted to kind of get that out of the way too. Looking back at the chat, let's see. People are going to look for, I think that's supposed to be anonymity. More and more, Big Brother like AWS will lose the market. I think, I agree and disagree with that, in the sense that I think there are a lot of people that increasingly are taking their online security pretty seriously. Every time they get an email from AWS or from whatever service that there's been some sort of data breach, I think that does get to people. I think that does bother them, and that taking sovereignty over your data again, or retaking it, is pretty appealing, I think. But at the same time, I think what's driving that isn't so much that they're I mean, at the end of the day, like most cloud data usage is coming from businesses, and I think most businesses expect to be able to not necessarily remain anonymous in their usage. They expect to be able to sign contracts and SLAs and stuff. I think our network kind of strikes the right balance of the things that are important to have privacy and sovereignty around are the things that you get privacy and sovereignty around, and then the parts that make sense to, I guess, just be upfront and I guess kind of know your customer style about, is where we do that. Looking on. Question: are we ready for our helium moment? Ready to produce X miner at significant scale? Ken, can you speak to that one?
I mean, I think the answer is yes on that. We've talked to a couple of different players about building smaller devices that can scale out. But I think one of the things that we've done differently is this licensing, right? What's going to end up happening is we'll build devices. We'll also have manufacturer partners building devices. We've got a couple that are, looking at it right now and going to be doing that. But also what will end up happening is that partners will build their own or find their own that they want to instantiate. And then customers will be able to load licensed software on platforms that they already have. So it went like this: 300 nodes, probably July 2021, 3,000 nodes then in 2022. So I'm going to guess the next jump is going to be to that 30,000 node zone as the next sort of exponential wave forward. And then from there, I think we just sort of go straight up. So as we get to that next sort of way station, of multiple tens of thousands, that's when you'll start to see a bunch of manufacturers pile in and say, oh, well, we want to be selling this device, because essentially they will see all the money that's in it. We haven't yet quite got there yet. So we are still very early in the helium moment. And I think probably 6 to 12 months from now will be when all of those devices start pouring in.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that that when we scaled Xminer the first time around, that was also in the midst of like motherboard and CPU shortages, which seemed to not really be a problem anymore. So I don't know the exact supply chain, and I don't know what kind of quantities are in the channels these days, but I'd imagine they're a lot better availability than there was at the end of 2021 and start of 2022 when there was like 9-month lead times on motherboards and it was really rough. So we have on the stage here Evergrow Steve. I can introduce him a little bit. That he's someone that invited me on a podcast a couple months ago to speak to his audience and his ecosystem in the Evergrow network. So we've chatted a little bit before, but I don't think he's been on one of these storage provider meetups before. So if you want to unmute yourself and either say hello or ask a question, you're welcome to.
Hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Yep.
Great. Thanks for bringing me up. I appreciate it. So congratulations just on it's been a tough fight for you guys, and I admire your tenacity, that's for sure. It's not easy getting to where you are, and especially when you run out of money. And so I really admire that you guys are still in the fight and you're still growing, and so for that. It was a while ago, but back in 2021 late, I got a 64 terabyte unit, and had no issues with it or anything like that. And of course, I got the basic license with it. Could you please explain to me? I wish I'd followed the project a little closer, but it's just not really. I can't. But why do I need to purchase the the $150 license that's being offered to the end of the month? Is it like, why do I need to upgrade that? Could you explain that to me, please?
If you have an Examiner, you don't have to buy that license. You don't have to. I mean, if you're happy with your Examiner, it is what it is. But here's the thing. We gave you a free basic license along with your Examiner to set up your own DIY if you want to. We're now giving you a dirt cheap upgrade to turn that basic license into a full license, $150 when it's normally $450. So here's the deal. If it's me, I'm going to go ahead and buy that license. I'm going to buy that upgrade. And then I'm just not going to do anything because I don't want to set up a DIY. I bought an Examiner because I didn't want to set up a DIY. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell that license down the road to somebody else because I know that a bunch of license sales are coming if we're going to grow this network to 300,000 nodes, right? So why wouldn't I take a $450 license for $150, sit on it, and then when it comes time and people are really hungry for licenses, turn around and spin it for $300 or $400? I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Have another question here. Any plans for a rack mount Examiner?
The rack mount didn't actually ever really take off for us in terms of people really asking for it. But here's the story on the whole, rack experience. Let's call it that. Look, the partners are just now starting to understand this tokenized incentive network as well. The people that signed up, I think, came in for a couple of different reasons. Some thought, well, hey, I mean, I'm early. I see how S3 compatibility works. I ought to be able to start a little business. I know some people. I can go out and talk to my Chamber of Commerce. I think I can get some storage. So they start looking at it from let's sell storage and get subscription revenue coming in every month. We'll make a bunch of money there. We've got a bunch of our own nodes. We'll put some storage on our nodes and life will be really good. And they're not wrong. I mean, it's a great strategy and I think it's going to work. And as we grow up, what'll end up happening is we will start dialing into the bigger MSPs and they'll just start doing that same thing, except they'll do it at a much bigger scale. So in those worlds, there's going to be definitely some needs for people to sell enterprise type nodes, right? Where they go out there and they talk to a mid-tier company, 2,000 seat company, 3,000 seat company. And they're going to say, well, look, we'd like to put some of these nodes in, but we don't want to scatter these little cubes around the place. Give us something that we can put in the way of a rack. And, that is very easy for us to do. So that's definitely something that we can spin up quickly, and we already have the platform ready to do it. It's really just a matter of seeing the demand for it come from the partners. I do want to take this opportunity, though, and then talk about something else that we have for partners, because this is really exciting. And, I think when people understand what it's about, they're going to recognize how this goes. So we have one partner he's been a fantastic partner from the beginning, but he's been a fantastic supporter from the beginning. Started off just buying nodes like everybody else and just kept buying more nodes, putting more nodes together, but then saw the partner program and really said, look, I'm okay. I'm doing fine in my personal business and life, but I really love this idea because I have this feeling I could grow this out to a point where I don't have to do too much. And then ultimately just watch this recurring revenue come in as a partner. Because not only can I get the recurring revenue on my storage nodes, but I can get it coming in from my customers that are, storing data and keeping it there for 4, 5, 6, 8 years or whatever. So one of the things that we, said early on is we said, well, look, we can make relayers for you. If you're not really super technically inclined, we can build special relayers for you. So we can put together a rack mount and, sell you off a super micro box that just is beautiful, with next day air replacement, the whole nine, and just we'll support the hell out of it. We'll, walk you through things and so forth. But that led us to start realizing, hey, there's this ability to do something right now, but if we buttress it with some extra development, we can actually make for a really slick thing. We're calling it Relayer MT, and it's MT for not empty, MT, and it's MT for multi-tenancy, right? And multi-tenancy means in cloud, essentially, that multiple customer cost centers and profiles can live in the same environment. So on this Relayer MT device, the whole notion is right now, in the regular Relayer software that you can download today for free and use, you do have an IAM capability. So you can permission a bucket and hand it off to your customer. So somebody running a data center right now today could set up a standard Relayer and they can go ahead and provision buckets, permissioned, hand them out to customers as a URL. And at the end of the day, it's a drop-in replacement for AWS, right? They can just do all the S3 work they want to do against it, nothing, and you're handling the Relayer for them. The challenge, of course, is there's a network hop, but if you're close to them, then there shouldn't be too much performance degradation. And if you've got a good link to the internet from your Relayer, and maybe you bring a 10G or a 2G or something like that, now all of a sudden, you've kind of made their life even better than what they might make it themselves. They might not have great internet back at headquarters. So essentially going through a partner's Relayer now starts to make a ton of sense. With the MT, we're going to balloon that up even better. And so here's what we're looking at with the MT. So one of the things about the Relayer MT is that not only will it have that standard bucketing and IAM capability, but the next thing it'll be able to do is easily deploy, monitor, and secure externally accessible customer relayers in siloed Docker stacks. Let's unpack that for a minute. Essentially, there's going to be a button in the Relayer. You click it, it will automatically spin up a whole nother Relayer inside your server, right? And so now customer A will have their own Relayer, right? Now you can give them full ACLs to their own Relayer. They don't just get a bucket. They get all the access. They can change, all the different things. They can choose a different set of provider selection. They can choose a bunch of different things in their own relayer, right? And then that gets cost centered, and ultimately then you charge them based on their use. They can see their own file manager. They can see all of that sort of stuff. And then when it's, time for them to put an on-prem relayer in, you can migrate it off to their location or do whatever. So somebody buys a fairly hefty relayer MT, and the cost right now for a device along those lines is somewhere around $8,000 to $10,000, right? You can go higher if you want to put more in there, but $8,000 to $10,000 is going to allow you to onboard some 6 to 10 pretty good sized customers, right? With this capability to silo their own Docker container relayers, right? Running on that one box with like a 10G connection going off to the network to make sure that you have plenty of bandwidth. Other thing that's going to be in there is monitor customer usage invoices, enabling, disabling, pausing customer access. So like if a customer gets caught uploading stuff that's in violation of the TOS, you'll be able to hit one button and pause them so that you don't have any liability as the partner that's essentially housing this data that's going up to the internet. We'll have full system metrics via Grafana. We're working on some really cool stuff there. We can monitor the stuff back here in our network operations center, things like physical intrusion, temperatures, disk failures, other critical components that are in there. And we can essentially send these out to you in a way that you stand up 3 of them and you end up with a clustered MT configuration for high availability. Now, right out of the gate, we're working with Supermicro with 2 or 3 years of next day air replacement. So we can, quickly spin up a thing if you need to lose a day. But if a day is even too much because the customers are really valuable and putting a lot of data in through you can cluster them up and end up in a situation where you have high availability relayers and you're going that direction. So relayer MT is really exciting. And I've given the partners some really good potential bonuses. If they get some data onto the network over the next 3 months, they're going to be able to put relayer MTs in at essentially no cost. So, there's some really good promos and stuff going on for partners right now. And I think a couple of them, the lights have gone off and they're really trying to figure out how they can go ahead and get started.
And on top of the laundry list of features that it has, there's also like some billing improvements or efficiencies around that I think just kind of came up with the console rewrite, the console v2 that have been implemented. So a lot of these pieces that we're working on kind of synergize together too.
This is something about the relayer, and especially on a relayer MT type platform, that people are not yet thinking about. But here's the situation. So right now we got a handful of partners. They're green. They're off in the right. You can look at them. You can see how many are there. So let's say, a handful of those guys start standing up public relayer MTs. So I stand one up in, Bakersfield, California. I stand one up in Vegas. Stand one up in New York. I stand one up in Belgium. I stand one up, in a couple. So there's like 4 or 5 of these things around the world. Now, these guys can go out and they can say, well, look, this is not public. I'm selling these to my customers. I'm going to go find customers for them and then onboard them onto my relayer. But look, there's nothing stopping you from front-ending that with, tool sets so that essentially anybody in the public can use your relayer, right? They could come in through like Nextcloud or OwnCloud or some other software that you find out there in the S3 milieu and come in and use your relayer as a node or a satellite that's out there. Okay, let's think about that. Let's extrapolate that out when we're starting to get hundreds of thousands of storage providers. What if there's 10 to 15,000 relayer MTs scattering the planet, right? With all these partners, quote unquote, that are all earning from these public relayers. And these public relayers start to form a network essentially that essentially precludes the need to on-prem. So if maybe 50% of SMEs and 95% of bigger enterprise customers all want to on-prem relayers, then maybe all the mom and pops and maybe only 50% of SMEs don't want to on-prem their own relayers. Well, they're going to want to go somewhere. Well, if there's a big global ring of relayers out there, and I'm in Tampa, Florida, and I want to find I can go into the net and we can start to build tools that makes network discovery or relayer discovery possible so that people can just go out and click on a link. That's the road to true decentralization, right? That's how we transition away from you have to buy storage from XNS, right, and pay us cash, and going to a place where people are able to just put the coins in themselves. And they do that through these relayer portals. Maybe the relayer portals accept SCP as payment, or they work along that way. You put in Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana or whatever ends up happening.
Yeah, and that's awesome, and that's why it kind of extra irks me when some people who are evaluating different, I guess, storage network projects kind of take a glance at us and characterize us as like centralized, or like if that's one of the key takeaways that they come away with. I'm just scratching my head because as someone who is in those conversations and understands that, like the direction that things are very obviously heading, it seems so obvious that this is going to be the most radically decentralized cloud network there's ever been. Does the relayer have built-in backup solution since the database is so critical? That's a very good question, and I like that you already seem to know that the database is very critical. It is. And that's why, in fact, yeah, it looks like Andy linked a screenshot just below where there is built-in database backup utility, so it can do it on an interval or per amount of storage that has gone through the relayer. And yeah, essentially, as long as you have that database backup, you will ideally be able to restore from kind of a disaster scenario. So that is a consideration that we have, and there is already some kind of basic intervals or usage-based backups in place. And we have some ideas in the future for different ways that we can make that even further robust. So cool. Here's a question. I thought the relayer had to be at the customer on site. So it doesn't have to be. There are efficiencies to the relayer being on the same network as the person that is uploading to it. You get to take advantage of the local, of what's probably going to be the higher speed local bandwidth as opposed to your internet bandwidth. So what that essentially means is if my upload line out to the internet is only 100 megabit, but my local networking is all gigabit, then if I have my relayer locally, I can upload, I can transfer my backup or whatever I'm uploading to my relayer. I can get that off to the relayer at that full gigabit speed, and then like overnight or something, the relayer can upload out to the network at that slightly slower, or at that 100 megabit. So that is kind of the best of both worlds. You get the quick backup off your machine, and then you're still able to, then the relayer works over a longer period of time at your internet speed. But the relayer can also be set up, and I've personally done this, where you can access it from externally. So somebody could as well, so this is what we were talking about with the relayer MT, somebody could set up kind of hosted relayer sessions where you access it over an endpoint. You are provided with like a S3 access key, secret key, bucket. So as long as you have those credentials in place, then you're able to access a kind of hosted endpoint that would just look like a URL, most likely. So you can do both. There's efficiencies, there's trade-offs. On-prem is kind of the most ideal. It's the most efficient, but that does raise the barrier in such a way that then you need an actual device, you need hardware on premises, you need someone, or at least you need remote access, I guess. So it's not the right tool for every situation. So that's why partners have options. Trying to remember the order that we covered everything in. So we started out with the $150 upgrade offer that if you haven't already taken advantage of, there's a very short window to be able to do that if you haven't already. So don't waste any time. The 183 upgrade. So there is a fork scheduled for mid-July. Please update your storage provider nodes if you haven't already. Then we talked at great length about the new console that is in place, so console version 2. That's already live if you head to console.xns.tech. I think it's only going to get better over the next week or so as some of the final pieces that weren't, I guess, quite ready when we cut over, but will be very shortly if they're not already. That's all done, or that is going to be done. Really happy with this new version. Very powerful. Things like the partner portal I think are really cool. That's awesome. And looking forward to how that fits with things like Relay or MT that we also touched on. So good talk today. Thank you for joining us, Ken. So thanks, everyone, and get your storage provider nodes updated, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.